Phase 2 of answering the call to do more with your life is what I call the gem. This is a knowing phase, and what it is you need to know in this phase is that everything you need to answer the call to do more with your life is already within you. So in this little series here, I'm going to convince you of that fact, also give you some ideas and resources of how to connect with it. In today's video, I'm going to introduce you to your whole life economy. This is the book that I published in January 2018. Recognize your true value and improve your quality of life. Your whole life economy is a concept based upon 7 precious personal resources that we all have within us, but we're probably taking for granted. When we learn to value these resources appropriately, we will be much more discerning about how we distribute them and much more conscious about how we consume. This results in a greater quality of energy across our whole lives. So what are these precious resources? Our first precious resource is the resource of time. Time is our most precious resource. It is tangible, measurable, non-renewable. Once this moment is gone, it's gone. And when we value the resource of time, we recognise that once this moment is gone, it's gone. We live life on that basis. Of course we know that, but how often do we live life on that basis? When we really recognise that, we'll be much less willing to waste our time on meaningless activities that don't bring a good quality of energy into our lives. If we have a problem saying no, we will be much better with our boundaries. We will learn the importance of saying no. And that will become much easier for us when we're valuing ourselves. Also, when we value the resource of time, we recognise that somewhere within us, actually, our timing is perfect. And if we can tune into that place, we realise that what we're experiencing and where we are in our lives is exactly where we need to be. We're learning the lessons, the exact lessons we need to learn in order to grow. That's the resource of time. Our second precious resource is the resource of attention. When we value the resource of attention, we recognise that where focus goes, energy flows, as said by Tony Robbins. We recognise that our resource of attention is entirely within our control, and we learn to manage those annoying distractions in our lives. We recognise the value of our attention to the attention economy. Now, this is the technological influences we have in our lives, like our social media, where we trade our attention for our data, and our data is sold on for a real cost. So when we recognise the value of our attention to these sources in our lives, we will respect our attention so much more. And then we can curate our influences, we can curate our content and make sure that what we're getting is what we want, and what we're trading is what we want to give away. We can be much more conscious of that. Another important way to manage our resource of attention is in managing our beliefs. And when we realise that our beliefs are not fixed, that we can choose beliefs that empower us rather than beliefs that limit us. And I'm going to come back and talk about that in a later episode. So our third precious resource is the resource of physicality. When we value the resource of physicality, we recognise that the gift of life is the most important gift we'll ever be given. Gary Vaynerchuk says that our chance of having a life is 1 in 400 trillion. When we recognise that fact and we use that as a basis to live from, we will be able to treat ourselves with the respect that we deserve. And this will play out in our relationship with exercise and food. And we realise that when we have a better relationship with in these areas of our lives, that we're actually investing in our future. And it's not about becoming perfect, it's just about becoming a bit better. Exercise is our renewable energy resource, and it's important that we engage with that in a positive way. Our fourth precious resource is the resource of money. Now, when we value the resource of money, We recognise that there's no intrinsic value in the paper note or the figures in your bank balance. We recognise that the value of money comes with the story we attach to it and the energy it brings into our lives. And we can manage that energy so that it brings a positive return of security and freedom rather than burden and control. And so it doesn't matter how much or how little money we've got, we have the ability to improve our money story. And we also recognise that money does not make our identity, it doesn't make us who we are. Also, when we value the resource of money, we will be much more discerning about the practices we're investing in, and we'll ensure that we're not really investing in practices that are destroying our planet. Our fifth precious resource is the resource of wisdom. Now, the resource of wisdom is the one that really improves with age, or it should do, because our resource of wisdom comes from our experiences. It comes from learning from our experiences. But if we're not really valuing the resource of wisdom, perhaps we're not learning from our experiences. Perhaps we've been faced with an experience that keeps repeating in our lives, and we're wondering why this keeps happening. And it's because we're not really learning the lessons we need to learn from this experience that's been presented to us. So when we value the resource of wisdom, we do learn from our experiences. We recognise that all our experiences are brought to us to learn. And we can improve our wisdom, and we can also improve our wisdom by sharing it. When we value the resource of wisdom, we can become much less anxious about what the future might bring, because we recognise that adversity brings the challenges that makes us grow even more and gives us more to offer. Another important aspect of our resource of wisdom is our innate creativity. Now, this is something that I'm going to come back to again and again, because it's actually fundamental to my whole concept that each of us has within us this innate creativity. And this is where we connect with our unique contribution and what we have to offer the world. That's what this channel is all about. Our innate creativity can be found at the connection between our passions, our skills, our experiences, and how we choose to deliver that. So I'm going to come back and talk about specifically about that in a later episode. Our sixth precious resource is the resource of compassion. When we value the resource of compassion, we recognise that compassion is not an emotion, it is an act. It is our response to suffering, it's how we respond to suffering. But it is really important to manage this resource appropriately, because there is so much suffering in the world and it is so easily available to connect to. And what we can find is that we feel powerless over all the world's problems, and then we start to disconnect from this resource. We start to disconnect from this resource and we get compassion fatigue, and then nothing happens. We really want to avoid that as much as possible. I believe the best way to value the resource of compassion is to focus your efforts and your energies into those areas of the world that you care about the most, and that's how to have the greatest impact. Another important way to value the resource of compassion is to know that there is a time to give and a time to receive. I've said that everything you need to answer the call to do more with your life is already within you, but this doesn't mean that we become superheroes. What it means is that we become conscious of what we have to give. We also become conscious of our limitations in life, and that we know when and who to ask for help. And that's a really good way to manage the resource of compassion. Being of true help to another human being is actually a privilege. Being able to have an impact on another person's life and to improve their life, that is a true privilege. But if we're just so focused on giving that privilege to other people and not accepting it from other people, that's not really valuing the resource of compassion. So there's a kind of delicate balance around the resource of compassion, and it does take a lot of discernment to be able to manage this resource appropriately. Our seventh precious resource is the resource of joy. Now, when we really value the resource of joy, we recognise that there's joy available to us in any moment. But joy is not the denial of pain. We must experience our pain to be able to really experience our joy, because if we're just denying our pain, then we're not experiencing joy at all. In fact, we're probably not experiencing anything. We really need to have that balance and that contrast in our lives. But having said that, it's recognizing that there is joy in that pain as well, because maybe you're in the middle of grieving the loss of a loved one at the moment. But you recognize that within that grief is the price we pay for love. So there is joy in that concept too. The greatest joys for me are the simple things in life. This is where I find the greatest joys, is in my relationships, my relationship with my husband, my relationship with my friends, animals, nature, all these things that are just easily available to us, and they really are the source of so much joy. And when we recognize that, we can really place our gratitude in those areas, because the practice of gratitude is a really positive way to increase the resource of joy in our lives. So that's an introduction to your 7 precious resources. If you want to learn more about this, I'm going to add a link below, and you can go onto my website where you can download the introductory chapter, and you can see a video of the book launch talk that I gave. And you can also buy the book from Amazon if you so wish. So in my next video, I'm going to talk more about that innate creativity. What exactly do I mean by that? And how did I access mine? So I hope you'll join me for that.